words were beating time in his head. Something about a summer house and a veranda and gin. He'd seen straight away why Margaret had sent it. It was about a girl like Lucinda. He hoped he wouldn't still be thinking about it when he copped it. As he probably would. They all probably would. It wasn't yet dawn, and the birds were silent. Any creature with any sense would have fled long ago. A few sounds came from the forest, occasional shots, and sometimes a vehicle noise somewhere far away. They'd been told other regiments were coming. Reinforcements. God, they needed them. They couldn't hold out forever. They'd be picked off one by one, line by line, and the Japanese would stream over their corpses into India. There was a line about ominous dancing ahead. He had no idea what that meant. Mist was forming. Dangerous stuff. Ominous stuff. He heard something like a shuffling, shots and cries closer now. He nudged Lewis and Das to wake up. 1970s. Child's fancy dress outfit. Native American. C. 1974. This cause must be especially close to your heart, Mr. Ash, said the vicar's wife, offering him a rich tea. Jay, he said, please. He wondered why the plight of children in Africa should be closer to his heart than hers. Perhaps she thought that India and Africa were interchangeable. Aspects of Otterum reminded him of his early days in England, when people had said in slow, loud voices, "It must seem very cold to you." After the first few times, he'd just agreed with them. Why bother explaining that actually he had grown up in the shadow of the Himalayas, where people often needed warm clothes just as much as they did here? He'd spent most of his childhood in a home for orphans and the discarded children of the Empire. He'd been constantly reminded that he was one of the lucky ones, as an aunt on the English side of his family was sponsoring him, and he would be going to live with her when he'd finished school. Having met very few of his relations, Jay had pictured the two sides of his family as opposing hockey teams. He had been picked for one side, though he looked much more like a member of the other. All Jay had left of his mother now were a few fragments of memories. A flash of silver and blue bangles, an image of pieces of broken crockery that they'd pressed into a flower bed at the front of their bungalow after he'd driven his toy truck into a rattan table and sent cups and saucers crashing to the ground. A feeling of her gripping his hand when his father had returned from shooting a leopard that had been menacing the company lines. And a few words of an Assamese song that she'd sung about the moon. Now, here he was, in an English vicar's dining room, wondering if there was any way he could make his excuses and leave. Not just the meeting, but the committee. Everything. It had all been Pammy's idea, but when she talked about signing up for the committee and getting more involved in village life, he'd thought that she meant both of them, not just him. They were planning the annual village fete. Otterum Overseas Aid would have a stall and a float in the parade. He found himself offering to drive the float. He had a license for vehicles the size of a truck from his apprentice days. The committee had decided on the theme of Peoples of the World. They all seemed very keen to have Emmie among the local children in the tableau. They would wave collecting tins as they went. Somebody asked if Pammy would dress up too. The vicar's wife said that she could imagine Pammy as a Dutch girl with two long blonde plaits and a pair of clogs. Jay knew that Pammy's cooperation was extremely unlikely. She took 3/4 of an hour to do her makeup before putting out the milk bottles. She would never appear in fancy dress, unless it was something glamorous. "Do you have some traditional dress that Emmie could wear?" Audrey Pheasant asked. She was a huge woman, taller than Jay. When he'd been introduced to her, he'd thought, Pheasant must be a nickname. She had the beakiest profile.